Professor. I have a question about the effect of de-extinction on the food chain in the ecosystem. What would happen if we bring these extinct animals back to life and leave them into the wildlife? What would happen?
Yeah, if you ask me, nobody knows. But you can think about, because the food chain in ecosystem is very important. Usually scientists are trying to identify what we call keystone species and try to understand how to maintain a stable ecosystem, right? So if we bring back, for example, mammoths, I asked my 10-year-old son, several years ago, asked him, do you think we should clone mammoths? And first of all, he doesn't understand what do we mean by clone. So I say, okay, if scientists has a way to bring mammoths back to life, will you be interested to meet with mammoths? Then he was very excited. He said, of course. I said, okay, the second question is, where do you want to keep it? Oh, this take a while to think, right? If we have one mammoth cloned, then what should we do? We keep them in the zoo or in a conservation center or release to the wild? I think there will be a lot of controversy. So most likely, if that can be done, most likely we'll keep them in the museum or in the zoo, just as some other animals in the zoo. It's very hard to imagine we'll release some of the extinct species to natural population. Yeah. But I rather think we shouldn't spend the money to do science like this. We should, rather than bring back all the extinct species, we think about how to keep the biodiversity at the current moment. And I think that the money we spend in research in these two parts probably differ a lot. And we just have to allocate our resource in the right place. But I know some scientists are really eager. We all driven by curiosity. And there's no specific rule to guide the scientist. Cannot do, of course we cannot clone human, everybody knows. There's an ethical issue. But for other wildlife, animal or plants, we probably don't have such a regulation. So that's why we have a lot of discussion and debates, and I know people are working on that direction. And you can think this will lead to some unexpected consequences.
Thank you, Professor, for answering the question.
My question is Professor Ting. You mentioned that different methods were used for the identification of genetic diversity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is the implication of it, right? Some method gives four species, and other provide 8 species. If so, then people might be confused, and they will focus in which species, either on 4 or 8. What will be the implication of it?
So I think the question was asking if different methods give different answers. So for example, some people think there are 4 different giraffe species. Some people might think there's only 1. And some people say, oh, each subspecies are unique in natural population. I think we have to look into the evidences. What kind of evidence scientists presented, and whether different, scientists from different fields all agree with certain definition. I think the definition of each species, people can debate about it. But I think most people probably will agree, even each subspecies in each habitat, each small population are important Because remember, conservation, when we raise like a conservation issues, we'll say, oh, we should protect this particular species. We're not only protect that species, we're protect the entire environment. So from that point of view, I think each population is unique and also important. Even like there are only 4 species, but I don't think scientists will say, oh, you know, this population is exactly the same with the other population, so we don't have to care about that. What they try to do is, because they are distinct, they probably 4 distinct groups. So for some groups, they are already in a very small number of individuals. We should pay attention to those. I think that's the main argument there.
So it means there might be no confusion, right? Like some they mention like 4 species, other they mention 8 species. At the end, in which species these conservationists they have to focus? There is no confusion, right?
So that would be the end for the conservation policy. So policy is not only biology. It's also, you know, people have to talk to each other, and you have to also consider whether there's a conflict between conservation and some other directions. So they end up to the policy decision. But what I'm trying to present here is trying to say, okay, now we have some new techniques and methods. We can understand the population better, and we can maybe define the species in sort of a more, a better way to define species. And we can discuss from here to see what would be the best conservation strategy people can do in the future. I think that's the main point.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, Professor Ting, on the topic of de-extinction, let's come to the debate. Don't you? I agree with you when you say that we should focus more on the species we have and encourage and promote biodiversity. But don't you think our curiosity would outweigh that? For example, there's some news in the media about scientists looking at bringing back mammoths, and I'm very happy you brought up the issue on elephants. I would like to see what a mammoth looks like.
Yeah.
And not have to depend on Hollywood to depict mammoths in movies. I also want to see what a dinosaur looks like. And if you look at the new movies or the recreation of Jurassic Park, they seem to be showing that dinosaurs are actually protecting humans from other more predatory dinosaurs, and that brings sort of a cool effect on having dinosaurs back in our ecosystem. But of course, the question arose: the food chain. What happens to the food chain? What happens to the balance that we're used to in our ecosystem? So I think maybe the issue of ethics is not really applied to animals and plants as we focus so much of that on human studies. But who knows? As the debate and the conversation grows, then maybe we might have to start looking at ethical policies, producing or creating policies for protecting the biodiversity we have now in our animals and plants. Now let's talk about the ocean.
My question would be about the ocean currents and its link to global warming. You mentioned that the current that's coming from the Antarctic would be lower temperatures, so the density is higher and that water is flowing at the bottom. But the studies have showed that with the increase in temperature, the polar ice caps are melting, and wouldn't that lower the density and change the path of the current? And my question is, given all this data, isn't this proof enough that we can say, okay, global warming is occurring? It's something that is affecting the entire world because the current goes throughout the world, as you mentioned before. So couldn't this be a justification that we need to come together right now to fix this issue?
Wait, before you answer. It's something related to what she said. for the movement and the current of the ocean, doesn't gravity play a role in that as well? And in what you was talking about, if the ocean is flat. If the ocean is flat, how will gravity works on a flat surface?
Okay. That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. For the first question, I don't think we really need, we always need more evidence to support the idea that the world is becoming warmer, right? There's no end to it. You can always find new evidence, new evidence. And you are saying that the melting of ice, right? And also the circulation. Actually, the circulation, the thermohaline circulation is in such a big spatial scale, it's very difficult to observe. There are other evidence that is much, much easier that could also support global warming. Okay? And for the second question, I was joking, right, when I see the sea is flat. But actually I wasn't, because the sea wasn't really flat, okay? And it is affected by mass under the water, by the temperature of water in the water column. So actually you could see bulges of the ocean from satellites. So they are using this data to infer the water temperature beneath the surface. So the ocean is definitely not flat, even in our spatial scale, and it could be detected. So, and my title is trying to get attention, I have to admit.
And you did succeed. Congratulations.
It's for Dr. Soong. Can you tell us what is the global issues that we are facing today in the world of oceans? And for Dr. Ting, yes, I heard the term about genome sequencing. Can you tell us about what is the genome sequencing all about? Thank you.
There are several big issues of global magnitude about the oceans. The first one is, of course, the global warming. And the second is seawater acidification, because CO2 dissolves in the water and makes the water more acidic. And according to one estimate, the pH value has already decreased by about 0.1 since 200 years ago.
What about overfishing?
What about what?
Overfishing.
The global fishing is the third problem. Is we are depleting about 70% of the species, marine species in the world. So a lot of things we used to be eating are now very expensive or has already went extinct.
How to overcome?
And this happens in a global scale, not only in Taiwan, but fortunately in certain part of the world where conservation is really enforced, people are still getting bigger fishes, right? Yeah, but in Taiwan, we suffered a great loss of natural resource, especially in the marine environment. And that is due to overfishing, not due to pollution.
Okay, I'll just say a few words about genome sequence. So I think most of people knows the entire human genome is sequenced, and we know, like we know. So in our genome, we have 3 times 10 to the 9th base pairs. Then we pretty much read every letter in the human genome. But we're not only conduct one single genome. We have over 7,000 human genomes. In the past 2-3 years, there are many papers addressed ancient genome from human samples, human relatives. And we know a great deal about human prehistory migration, like I said, out of Africa and some population admixtures. So in practically in agriculture, in wildlife conservation, in a lot of other fields, we're also using genome sequence a lot, try to understand the genetic basis of certain biology questions. It's very expensive to me. I think conduct a genome is very expensive. When I talk to students in my department, I say, it's not only the money. So usually students talk to me and say, oh, this is very expensive. So it's not only money you spend in sequence, means read the letters from the genome, but also the analysis. So for today, like young students, like all of you, I think it's very important to have analytical skills, analyze data, and analyze big data. Not only genomics, but like in ecology, we have like a really big data. You see all the like data points from Dr. Soong's slides. So there's huge information in the world. And if we want to ask questions and try to address questions using some of the existing data, we have to have the ability to analyze those data. So that's just a few words about genome science.
Okay, we have one more question from
Professor Soong. You mentioned about the circulation of water from one point to another, right? One ocean to another. How about from top to bottom? Is there any possibility or not? One is that, and another is you mentioned the argo, right? Different argo and coordinated effort, right? Is there a new thing involved with this coordinated effort, like about the invention of sea or something else besides this temperature and salinity?
Okay, yes, water does move from top to the bottom in high latitudes because it's cold in winter and they sink. There is very good evidence for that. But for tropics, it never happened. It may happen reversely when cold water will push upward when they hit a landmass. Okay, it's called upwelling. And for your second question, it was about, give me a hint. Argos, yes. Because they were not anchored, so they actually were carried by water. So for these 10 days apart, they also change in position. So this information is used to study currents. Yes. So besides temperature and the conductivity, that is salinity, now we are also studying the water movement horizontally, not vertically. Yes.
Thank you.
My question is for Dr. Soong. Can you tell us that how big is ocean? That how many part of the ocean have human being reached and do research in there?
Or
For like in search of life and some other any organic matter in the ocean.
okay. That's a tough one, right? And the easy answer is I don't know. But if you want to study temperature, salinity, current, it's easy because the data set is available. For any others, it's very scattered. People work on something in certain area, mostly near their home, because it's very expensive to have open sea cruises. So most people rely on satellite information now, because it's just costing too much to study other aspects of the ocean. And so remote sensing is now popular because of it's very cost effective. And most data collected by satellites are shared among scientists, among countries. So we tend to ask easy questions, easy and cheap questions.
For Dr. Ting, anyone interested in the new techniques that she was talking about? because with those new techniques, we can now understand those animal species at a molecular level that has never been done before. And it helps us to understand how these animals interact with the environment and also with humans. And that's created a big impact in efforts on biodiversifying as well as conserving these our animal species. And many of you come from developing countries where there's always a problem with, there are usually problems with managing the environment. It's either overuse of water resources or limited water resources, or deforestation, or something to do with disasters, you know. And these days we're talking a lot about, we're hearing governments talking a lot about climate resilience, you know, creating ecosystems not only for humans but also for animals and plants to survive and to live on, to continue. So I have a question for both of you. With all the efforts that are being made through science or through many NGOs we have, and also the help of United Nations and other political organizations, should we be scared? Should we worry that those efforts will not be enough to conserve our ocean resources as well as the resources we have on Earth? I mean, what do you foresee in the future? Because I don't want you to be alarmists, you know, with global warming and climate change. And we have people who have very big platforms today who seem to be not much in agreement with what scientists. We've also seen results where we've also seen reports where global warming has almost been debunked because scientists, they fake the data, and so there is that impact as well, that scientists sometimes may not be truthful in what they're reporting to promote their own ideologies. So should we be worried, or should we be content, or should we push more in making those changes?
I think your question has all the answers.
No.
Yes, we should always be worrying, right? Because somebody will abuse the system. It always happens. But on the other hand, I think we know something that has yet to happen. This applies only to the 21st century or 20th, right? We are predicting our fish will be all gone by 2047. Temperature will raise 4 to 6 degrees by 2100. A lot of predictions. They were all based on certain assumptions. True. And hopefully those assumptions don't hold water, but until we know more, they are still predictions.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you, and to me, because individual person can do very little, but what I can do at my position is I try to emphasize on education. So not only in scientific research, but education. I think it's very important to educate our population, and also echo Professor Soong's talk, because we have to have the ability to know what exactly is truth. Because everybody presenting the data to you, but we have to sort of like have our own justification. So that's one thing. And also, I think in our audience, we probably have like a future minister, future president of the country in your country, and you're very important, because I think all president or all the leaders has to have very clear mind in understanding scientific data, because it's important for you to make the decision. So at the end, it's all decision making. So all this is important. And in undergraduate to graduate to higher education, I think we try to emphasize on those abilities. And if with those abilities, we would have like a great leaders in the country and lead the human society to the right position, then we won't have those global like warming issue, or at least we can reduce the threat of global warming in the future.
Thank you very much. I think we've now the end of this of our discussion, and please remember to you're here at university, and some of you in research institutions, you have to learn to ask questions and ask the right questions. Always question what you're learning. Is it truthful, or is it just fake? Is it something that's made up? Because you will go back to your countries, to your various countries, and you will be expected to join the development program, the nation building, national development program of your countries, and you will be expected to make an effort, right? So use your time here wisely, and download as much information as you can in your brains, because when your brain is equipped with information, then you can be useful in the efforts that are being made. As you saw, a global effort in our ocean studies, because we want to know them better, right? A global effort in understanding our biodiversity and how to preserve them, and it all boils down to, and this is what you are, a global forum here. We have countries from India, Nepal, some African countries, the Caribbean, and you're so diverse. So let's build those bridges that we facilitate for you, and let's make sure that your time here is successful. As Professor Ting said, future ministers and future leaders of your country. Okay, thank you very much.